All right, in this explainer, we're going to walk through a complete market DNA cycle, from start to finish. Our subject is the NASDAQ 100 index. We're going to follow the entire journey, right from the initial plan all the way to the final outcome, phase by phase.
Okay, before we dive in, we've got to cover a few important disclaimers. Just so we're all on the same page, this is for informational and documentation purposes only. It is absolutely not financial advice. A couple of key rules with the model itself. Leverage above 10 is prohibited, and you should never, ever invest essential personal funds. Always stick to your own risk management plan.
So here's what we've got on the agenda. First, we'll look at the visual record and the initial plan set up in Phase 1. Then, we'll trace the actual path the market took through Phases 3 and 2. After that, we'll watch the cycle wrap up in Phase 4. And to finish it all off, we'll do a little plan versus reality in the performance summary.
All right, let's get right into it. We are documenting a complete market DNA cycle here. The asset we're looking at is the NASDAQ 100, which you might also see referred to as the US100 index.
We're going to start right at the beginning, with the initial plan. This is the blueprint, everything that was laid out back in Phase 1 of the cycle.
So, let's kick things off with Phase 1, the plan and projections. Think of this as the cycle's blueprint. This entire setup was established on January 18th, 2026.
Okay, take a look at the initial chart for Phase 1. You'll spot two really important entry points here. We have the primary entry, which is labeled M, and then there's a secondary entry labeled PC. Now, this setup is super important because it creates two completely different scenarios for how this whole thing could unfold.
Now let's talk risk. What were the parameters set out in the plan? Well, the model works with a hypothetical capital of $100,000. The mean entry price was projected right around $25,042, and the expected max drawdown, that was capped at 5%. The projected time for the cycle's trapezoid structure was 36 days. Now, this is key. Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size.
So, what did all that mean for potential returns? Well, because of those two entry points, the plan had two different scenarios. Scenario 1 would have kicked in if only that primary M entry was hit. That was targeting a 1.1% return. But Scenario 2? That was the one that would activate if the price also hit the secondary PC entry, and that one projected a more ambitious return of 2.3%.
Okay, so that was the plan. Now, let's follow the actual path the cycle took. We're going to document the price movement as it completed both Phase 3 and Phase 2.
And here's where things get interesting. On January 22nd, a key event happened. The price reached that secondary entry level, P of C. And just like that, Scenario 2 from our initial plan was officially in play. So, right after hitting that PC level, the price turned and started to move up. You can see it reach the apex, which is labeled N. That single move completed Phase 3 of the cycle. And get this, it all happened on the same day, January 22nd.
Then, literally the very next day, on January 23rd, the price made contact with a key structure known as the delayed mirror. And that touch, that marked the completion of Phase 2.
And that brings us to the final stage of the whole sequence. We've arrived at Phase 4, the cycle's completion.
And here it is, the grand finale. On January 27th, we can see the price pushed up and reach the upper boundary of that trapezoid structure. That event officially completed Phase 4, bringing this entire cycle to a close.
All right, so the cycle's done. Now it's time to look back and see how things actually played out. Let's jump into the performance summary and compare those initial projections from Phase 1 with the final real-world outcome.
Okay, this slide really tells the story, doesn't it? The expected return for Scenario 2 was 2.3%. The realized return? Bang on, 2.3%. Now check out the drawdown. The plan allowed for a max of 5%. The actual drawdown was just 0.54%, a tiny fraction of the risk budget. And maybe the most impressive part? The time. It was projected to take 36 days, but the whole thing was over and done in just 8.
And to put a final number on it, here's a direct quote from the documentation itself. It says, the expected total profit for scenario number 2 in Phase 1 was $2,304 and has now been realized completely.
And that wraps up our step-by-step walkthrough of this market DNA cycle. It's a pretty fascinating look at how the model's projections lined up with the actual market outcome in this case.
If you want to dive deeper and see more documented analysis just like this one, you can head over to the source website at marketdnaedge.com.